This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
Want to pull off the season's freshest trends? You just need the right shoes. That's where Designer Shoe Warehouse comes in. Loving wide-leg jeans? Pair them with sleek, low-profile sneakers. Obsessed with the sheer trend? Try it with mesh flats. Feeling boho? Comfy sandals nail the whole free-spirited thing. Find on-trend shoes from the brands you love, like Birkenstock, Nike, Adidas, and more at DSW.
For PA 9 to noon, final hour is upon us, a potpourri-style feast. Lots of things to chat about on a Friday. Local maintenance season as it is. And I have to admit, Johnny K, I'm bringing him into the mix today. And it's like, I want to talk about the Wolves and Game 1 and just kind of run through what was supposed to be the inevitable. But then Halliburton did this.
The Pacers have it, 7 seconds. Halliburton across the timeline with 5, down 1. Halliburton dancing on Wallace. Pulls up right wing, arcs it, and sticks it with 0.3 of a second to play. Pacers lead 111-110 with 0.3 of a second to play. Timeout Thunder.
How about that? John Krasinski of The Athletic at John Krasinski via X. They had been held at bay all game and 10 points, kind of in that lead area right there for OKC, and they just kept chipping away, and Halliburton does it again. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Nordo. I mean, this is kind of what the Indiana Pacers experience has been, right? I mean, they just are never out of a game, no matter who they're playing, no matter where they're playing. They just always keep chipping away and coming at you. And that was the A1 example of it last night in Game 1. I mean, you're facing an all-time great defense. You're playing in a building that almost no one goes in and wins in. And it didn't matter at all to the Pacers. They just had big shot after big shot. And then Halliburton knocks down the biggest one, hitting that little sidestep kind of jumper over Kason Wallace, like he's been shooting that for his whole life, which I'm sure he probably has been.
I don't know how you were feeling about it. I mean, first half, what was it, 19, 20 turnovers that they had in the first half. And there was part of me, I mean, it was just ugly at times watching how helpless the Pacers were against that suffocating Oklahoma City defense. But there was also part of me, Johnny, where I'm like, it's kind of nice to watch another team having to deal with it after my favorite team just got stymied and stifled by it. It was just crazy, specifically the early stage miscues by Indy that they were ultimately able to overcome.
Yeah, it did. It felt very familiar to what we saw in the Western Conference Finals, and just like, okay, welcome to the show, Pacers. This is what you're going to have to deal with. I do think, though, that it seemed like as the game went on, the Pacers got adjusted to it fairly well. Mike Conley had talked about this after Game 1 of the conference finals, where it's just the step up in physicality, in energy, in fouling, and all of the things that the Thunder do and do very, very well. It takes a while to get used to it. I mean, the Pacers were playing the Knicks, who are not a very good defensive team, in the conference finals. They had some time off before they get to Game 1, and I do think that once you get into the ring against the Thunder, it does take a minute. You get shocked early on at how physical they are, at how big they are, at just how frenetic they can be defensively. And the Pacers were awful in the first half, 19 turnovers and 15 made baskets. But to their credit, they were able to gather themselves to kind of get their legs underneath them and find ways to exploit the Thunder in the second half that the Wolves were not able to do for much of their series. They did in a couple of games, but not for most of it.
Do you think Carlisle and the Pacers in some way need to thank the Minnesota Timberwolves? And the reason I say that is because Obi Toppin with the 7 triples against the Wolves earlier this season. Then he goes 6-9 and hits 5 of them last night. They don't win the game without his production off the bench. You think Carlisle should send a little thank you card to Finch and the Howl for giving Obi Toppin that confidence?
It was fun. It's funny, Nordo. I was kind of texting with a Wolves official today just about, and we were having a little fun, but it was, Obi Toppin versus the Northwest Division is a max player. Like, that's what he just seems like. I mean, he certainly had, maybe those games against the Timberwolves got him even a little more confidence, but the way that he shoots it, the threes that he's making, the ability to get to the basket, how big he plays, it is a different Obi Toppin than what we're used to seeing versus almost everyone else. I don't know what it is about the Northwest, but if he ever got traded or signed here or anywhere else in the division, he might be an all-star.
Is there something instructive maybe that we can look at from game one? And we're so locked in on one event, right? 7-game series. OKC can run out in game 2, handle business, and just walk away with this thing. Certainly should still be favored in the series. Absolutely. But in a singular vacuum-like environment, I thought the Pacers were so much stronger on the ball defensively. Kind of one of the stories last night, they forced OKC into some tough shots. They weren't quite as clutch as they had been, specifically against the Wolves. And from a defensive standpoint, the Pacers just handled what OKC likes to do quite a bit better in making them more uncomfortable than the Wolves ever were really able to.
Yeah, I think, two thoughts on that. First of all, you're right, Nordo. Defensively, I do think that they were really into the Thunder. I think the key stat of the game was that the Pacers turned the ball over 25 times. They only gave up 11 points off of those turnovers. And that is usually where the Thunder just feasts on you. Like they turn you over, they get out in transition and they score either at the rim or pull up threes in transition, things like that. And that's what gets these runs building that gets a 12-point lead to a 25-point lead in like a blink. And so the Pacers did a really good job of getting back in transition once they did turn the ball over. And I think that the Wolves did struggle at that at times. And they are a faster group than the Wolves are. They play faster on both ends. With Rudy and Randall, it's a little bit slower, more plodding group with the Timberwolves, and the Pacers just match up better that way. But the second point that I want to make, Nordo, is kind of what you alluded to, is that, right after the game goes and the Pacers win, and it was a great win for them. I'm getting mentions, fire Chris Finch, boy, the Wolves need to be embarrassed, all this stuff. And it is one game, and I want Wolves fans to remember that the Wolves just crushed the Thunder in game 3, absolutely embarrassed them, and they lost game 4 by 2 points. Like, this could have easily been a 6-game series, could have been a 7-game series. Now, the Thunder deserve all the credit. They outclassed the Wolves. They won those games, but I think we want to just slow our roll a little bit and see how this series plays out before we start, hanging people in the town square again. Which is a little bit of an overreaction in my estimation.
No, and I love the way you put that, because I'm in complete lockstep. That's why I went down this road is how close these games really are. Not just the scoreline, that part's obvious. 1-point win, that's great. But you look at, there was about 3.5 minutes left, and as I opened this, I said I was kind of preparing to talk to you about what I thought was inevitable in the outcome of this game. You saw the Pacers cut the deficit to 4. Then they settled for a few bad threes in a row. SGA gets to the line. He makes it an 8-point lead with 3:20-something left. I'm thinking this game's absolutely over. But then there were moments where, again, you forced SGA into a couple of shots maybe he makes against the Wolves that he doesn't make against the Pacers last night. The razor hair thin margin of this thing, you kind of have to, again, put it in context of just being one game, but in the same sense, really appreciating, knowing from our experience a series ago, how difficult this was for the Pacers to accomplish what they did.
Yeah, I mean, let's just look at a couple of stats. Jalen Williams, 6 for 19. Chet Holmgren, 2 for 9. Cason Wallace, 3 for 9. Like the Thunder shot 39% for the game. Now, the Pacers deserve so much credit for that. Like, they played incredible defensively, especially in the second half, to make things difficult on everyone. Even Shea was 14 for 30, not exactly super efficient. And so the Pacers deserve that credit. I think we also can believe that maybe as the series wears along, as the young Thunder players get used to the stage, that Jalen Williams plays better, Chet Holmgren plays better, Cason Wallace plays better, Shea figures things out a little bit more, and that the Thunder grab control. Maybe they won't. Maybe the Pacers will just outplay them and just take them down. But I want to get this series a little bit of breathing room before we completely just react to everything and make blanket statements. The other part that also, to the Pacers' credit, Nordo, that has to be said is I get the sense that some Wolves fans will look at this and say, oh, the Indiana Pacers were able to do this against the Thunder. I mean, that's ridiculous. Why weren't the Wolves? The Pacers had the second best record in the league since January 1st. The number one was the Oklahoma City Thunder. So the Pacers, I think people have to understand, are an exceptional basketball team. They are very, very good. I think they're better than the Wolves right now. And so we have to factor all of that in as we're evaluating what happened. And we can still be disappointed with how the Wolves played in that series, especially in Game 5. But there are, big factors that add to the context of how we evaluate this whole thing and where the Wolves fit in this conversation.
Yeah, and I'm just fascinated by how they play. A little bit smaller than the Wolves, for instance. Like they use Miles Turner as their big man, but he's kind of more in a Naz Reid frame, it feels like. But like Nesmith, no one, other than me playing fantasy hoops, no one's, outside of Indianapolis Pacers fan base and a little bit of the national, those like you who know a lot. Nobody's thinking about Nesmith muscling his way in on Caruso for that and one last night. I mean, the way this team is built and what Carlisle has done, specifically given, we looked at them as kind of, obviously Halliburton is a problem, but, we expected those moments to be W's on the Wolves calendar, kind of a miss on our part, but incredible roster they've put together.
It is. And that is where I do think, Nordo, if we want to look, and if this continues, where even if the Pacers lose but are putting up a real fight against the Thunder, one thing you do have to consider is the roster construction of it, because, Halliburton's great, obviously, but he is also surrounded by 4 players on the court at almost every moment that can do things offensively, both off the dribble and shooting from the perimeter. And that is a hard thing to guard. And the Wolves are not built that way right now, with Rudy Gobert in the middle, with a kind of a streakier Randall from outside, with a few different elements out there. There were many occasions in the Thunder series where the Wolves had at least 2 non-threats from the outside on the floor at the same time. And that is a lot easier for Oklahoma City to sag into the paint, to take that away from Anthony Edwards, and to then just dare the other players to beat them. And so if Tim Connolly is looking at making changes to the roster, I'm not even necessarily saying, well, you got to trade Rudy Gobert, but I do think that there has to be continued effort to put as many players on the roster as possible who not only can shoot it from outside, but also can make a play off of the dribble. Nesmith can do that. Even Toppin can do that a little bit. Nemhard, like all of those guys, in addition to Halliburton, can do multiple things offensively to hurt you. And the Wolves had a couple of guys that were a little more one-dimensional that made that harder to pull off.
All right, stupid question time. Jonny Athletic, John Krasinski of The Athletic, theathletic.com, at JONKRAWCZYNSKI via X. Let's say I heard Boogie, DeMarcus Cousins, Boogie.
Yeah.
He was talking with Lou Williams and some FanDuel network podcast thing. This is a budding dynasty that we're looking at with OKC. You can say that with the picks. You can say that with the age at the core. Really damn good team that's not going anywhere. What is your philosophy? And you mentioned kind of how we're looking at our team in the context of the Pacers, and because they're where we want to be. is there the philosophy of if you truly believe that OKC is not going anywhere, they got picks for days, they can reload, not have to rebuild for half a decade, we'll say. You have Anthony Edwards, you have McDaniels, we know the names. Are you sticking to an idea of building organically, or are you battling the idea of that dynasty with home run swings this time of year?
Yeah, I mean, I like the way that Chris Finch put it, and really Tim Connolly at the end of the season, in terms of when you get as far as the Wolves have got in the last 2 years, both to the conference finals, both seasons, that means you are quite literally and obviously one step away from the finals. And so when that tells you that your window is open, and windows do close and open quickly now in this new collective bargaining agreement with everything going on. So when you think you are close, I do think it's important to go as all in as possible. Now, I believe that the Wolves can sort of have it both ways in terms of their core players largely are very young, with Ant, with Jaden McDaniels. You include Naz Reid in there, and I think they really do want to bring him back. And then you look down the roster at, Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon. Like, they have young players that they can stay young going forward. But I do think that they want to and should be aggressive in surrounding that young core with veterans who fit really, really well.
Yeah.
And so that's where you're going to have to make decisions on Rudy Gobert, on Julius Randle, on, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, on some of these other guys, on Mike Conley. I think, like all of these guys that you look at, you say, are these the best dudes to supplement the young core that we can let, so you can let those young guys grow organically and come up and get experience, and what they've done these last 2 years and giving McDaniels and Reed and Edwards this real deep playoff experience. You can't put a price tag on that for their development. It's been great. So now it's about, okay, like, how do you take that next step? Do you let this whole group learn from what they saw against the Thunder and take another crack at it? Or do you go out and look at a Kevin Durant? Do you go out and look at other players that you think might just fit a little bit better and might just take them a little bit closer to where they want to go? I'm not sure which way they're going to go, but knowing what Tim Connolly has done before, I think aggression should be expected this summer.
Yeah, and this is a big summer for them, certainly. I just following it since the Wolves had to bow out. For instance, like Dillingham. So, and you were probably in the mix for that. I think it was a scrum with the coach, and, he was talking about with Terrence Shannon Jr. Well, now we're going to work, defensive. There's some maturity and maybe some mental things that need to work there. But, how about a guy that can get you 3 buckets, 3 boards, and 3 fouls, maybe all in 3 minutes. I mean, it's an action festival with Terrence. But specifically with Dillingham, didn't leave a lot of confidence in my mind in terms of, okay, what I saw from him in October, hoping it was much better in the spring. He's still talking about maybe the fundamentals of his shot, being ready when he gets it, and just kind of, speeding up maybe his processes. And I felt like then, after that commentary, that suddenly, if we're talking about Durant, if we're talking about moves, that suddenly it was just like, we got to get rid of Dilling. Like, that's a trade piece. Like, it's already time to move on. And, maybe it's difficult to say it in the moment, but a little bit of patience in terms of, tearing this thing down, taking the absolute home run swing. I think that, Finch and Connolly have a good grasp on this, and it does have to be aggressive, but it has to be smart in terms of, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I guess, to use that cliche.
Yeah, I think 100%. And there has to be real conversations between Connolly and Finch about what is feasible for next season, because I'm with you in terms of, I do believe that Rob Dillingham has the skill set to actually be kind of one of those guys that could really help Anthony Edwards right now. One of the things that they really, really missed in that Western Conference Finals run was another player who could break the defense down off the dribble, get his own shot, and create and add some juice and some pace to the team. Now, I don't blame Finch for not playing 20-year-old Rob Dillingham big minutes in the Western Conference Finals after not playing most of the year. But what Finch did say after the season was that he has to change his philosophy and play some of these young guys more. I do think that if there's one real valid criticism of Chris Finch this season, it was that he really did hone in on the top 8 guys in his rotation at the expense of developing Terrence Shannon, Rob Dillingham. You can throw Minot and Leonard Miller in there a little bit if you want to, and getting them to a point where he could feel like he had some confidence in them. And so what Finch and Conley have to talk about is, hey, Chris, are you going to play Rob Dillingham next year? Because if you're not, then we should trade him while his value is still high and go try and find someone else. But I do believe that there is a feeling internally, and I think Chris Finch feels it as well, of that these are real assets and they should be playing more. And that is an antidote to what ails this roster is Terrence Shannon and Rob Dillingham just kind of playing, get out and run and break stuff kind of offense. And so that is available to them, but they do have to look at, is this real feasible for us to play these guys? Because if not, they've got to look at other options.
Last thing for you, and I always enjoy following you on X, John, but specifically over the last, let's call it 3-4 days, this disaster that's unfolding in public light with the Knicks is just freaking unbelievable. From Tibbs, 4 out of 5 years in the playoffs, longest run for the Knickerbockers in like a quarter century. Everyone hates Cat. I mean, a lot of national hoops guys going after Cat, whereas Cat's one of the reasons they freaking got to the Eastern Conference Final. You got Rick Brunson being sports dad clomper, and he's taking heat, and they let him go. What have you kind of taken from everything? Is that kind of imploded after they lost to the Pacers, after they had a terrific season? A guy like Rick Brunson, who's been here, Tibbs, we know Tibbs, but he's let go. I mean, it's just been super ugly out in New York.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to juxtapose the two teams who made the big trade, both made the conference finals, and kind of how the fallout has been, it's been pretty stark. I mean, the Timberwolves, they bowed out 4-1. They had an embarrassing game 5, but you just did not feel the finger pointing, the blaming, the deflecting in that Timberwolves locker room or within the organization the way that you felt it with the Knicks. Now, yeah. I think Tibbs is a great coach and has done an unbelievable job there. One of the issues that he consistently does have a blind spot for is more of the culture of the locker room and how these players fit together. And I do think it was a real problem within that locker room of players kind of blaming each other and right. Especially kind of looking at Cat in a way that emphasized his weaknesses and minimized his strengths. There's no arguing that Cat was the most reliable offensive player they had in the Eastern Conference Finals. Did he have defensive issues? Yeah, he did, of course, but so did Jalen Brunson. And Jalen Brunson was terrible in the last game that they played in Game 6 against the Pacers, and Josh Hart was awful offensively. And so there's just a lot of guys who had a lot of responsibility in why they didn't make it to the finals, and yet no one really seemed to be taking a lot of accountability. And the way that Cat is talked about in the national discourse is frankly just disgusting. Yeah. He is a flawed player, but a good-hearted, incredibly talented guy, and who is looked down upon for reasons that are just ridiculous. And so, yeah, it's been hard to watch it. It's been hard to watch that team and that organization that had such a good year, that should be feeling great about all they did, and it just imploding the way that it is.
Thanks for everything you do for our station and giving me time today. Looking forward for all your minutes. I know Kay Fallness, he hit the text line. He's looking forward to your updates on what Bill Guerin and company are going to be doing with the Wild as well. I mean, we got you all over the Metro, Johnny.
Yeah, now that this Wolves season is over, I got so much more time, so I can dive into the hockey part of it and really just re-engage with the fan base who loves me, who really just welcomes my opinions and my views on it. And we're all on the same page. So I can't wait for that. Absolutely. That's
awesome. Thanks as always. Love your work. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Torto.
Thank you. That's John Krasinski at JONKRAWCZYNSKI via X. He covers the hoops. He covers all things for The Athletic and does a terrific job. You can hear him with Barrero. He's all over the place. Saturdays with Sauce. If we ever do a Saturday show again, he's all over the map with us, and we love him for it. What we will do, we'll transition to some news with Brett when we return. It is the final hour, 9 to noon, a potpourri feast, if you will, Nordoin for PA on the Fan. What up, News du Nord, brought to you by the casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com. You're feeling the felt each and every day, all day, any day you want. Poker, blackjack, and table games always available. Having sips at Chips and tipping Derek Allen. And, of course, live racing, which go to CanterburyPark.com for all event details. This could be wrong, but I think it's right, so I'm going to roll with it. They're having Saturday racing, of course, tomorrow. But I think first post is at like 4. It's a little bit earlier than normal because you'll be able to watch and wager on the Belmont, which is out at Saratoga, New York. So, a little earlier post time, I believe, for Saturday racing tomorrow, but confirm that and maybe tell me if I'm right or wrong by going to CanterburyPark.com. Where are we going first, Brett?
Number 1.
We'll start with a team that's actually actively playing games right now in the sports abyss. It's your Minnesota Twins. They still win the series against the Somewhere Athletics, but yesterday did not go well for them. Every game was a throttling in this series. They win 3 out of 4, but lose 14-3. That's a football score. They come home today against the Blue Jays at Target Field.
Yeah, most interesting thing for me, it's not short term, like go out and beat the Blue Jays. That's cool. Most interesting thing for me moving forward will be ultimately how they adjust and how they deal and compensate for losing Pablo Lopez, who, again, asking him to make several steps forward in the right direction based off of what we saw from him last year. He's doing so. Then he gets the shoulder/arm related injury. He's out 12 weeks potentially. I know he's not throwing for 4, so let's just call it a couple months. And how they compensate for that. And is it a festa? Is it going to be potentially a tick up, short starts and maybe long relief, kind of playing bullpen bits here, there, and anywhere? How they and getting healthy offensively, which it feels like this is, I hate to use the A's like this, but they're just awful. So I guess they are, even despite yesterday. They're a get-right team. And you saw, I think, first 2 games of this series, they put 10 on them apiece. So getting the bats rolling, but how they adjust. How do they, and I floated this with Ted earlier when we were talking about the baseball team. And maybe it's just wrong and dumb, the idea of, what they use with the Varlin, because they're so good right now with Duran and Varlin, and you got Griffin Jacks that's really on the come, returning to greatness in that spot. So back end of the bullpen's absolutely awful. Funderburk this. But how they adjust long term with Mr. Lopez is going to be interesting to me. So if he comes back, let's say late August, are they in a spot? Still chasing the Tigers. Tigers are interesting. It's just kind of this overall high-end team production. Not a ton of ultimate stars, but then you look on the mound, they got Skubal and Flaherty. They got 3 pitchers with sub-3 ERAs rolling right now. I think Reese is the 3rd one. So we're 6 back from them. Royals chasing, Twins chasing, Guardians chasing. Everyone's chasing the Tigers. So will they be, when Pablo returns, will they be in a spot where they're still trying to make that jump and they're still in striking distance? I hope they are. But how they handle Pablo Lopez over the next couple of months is going to be interesting to me.
Number 2.
Something you can hear right here on the Fan will be Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Edmonton takes Game 1. Sounded like this.
Nugent Hopkins on the left, half boards, under pressure. Turns and gives it up. Beautiful pass. McDavid in front. One time and score! Leon Draisaitl! 4-3! Edmonton in overtime!
Who do you like in Game 2 tonight? Which, by the way, pregame at 6:30, puck drop at 7, right here on the Fan.
I like Edmonton to take Game 2 tonight. But as I was talking about last hour with fallness, I mean, the series is so awesome in its, generalities of, the cool postseason mix, the parity, the unpredictability of the NHL, and from a playoff standpoint, this felt pretty predictable that we would find our way potentially to a rematch of Florida and Edmonton. What they were able to do, down 3-1, kind of a quiet, kind of a tough second period for McDavid in particular, I felt. But overall, ultimately, McDavid was terrific in game one. But the way they were able to battle through and specifically lock down in the third period, only 2 shots by the Panthers. I do believe that Edmonton's going to come out tonight and they will win, and then they'll advance to 2-0 in the series. But this is one of those things where we are truly watching the two, not only the 2 best teams, the 2 right teams in this mix, but really everything that we dream about as Wild fans. It's just wave on wave on wave on skill and playmaking and the best players shining in the biggest spots. And what Bennett did in game one and what you were seeing from Barkov, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, Tkachuk could jump up and make 2 plays tonight that completely changed things, and the Panthers are tied up at 1. So I'm tepidly rolling with Edmonton in game 2, but I am just expecting, similar to game 1, chaos, frenetic pace, insanity to ensue up in Edmonton, and it's going to be an awesome game. But yeah, I think Edmonton's going to go 2-0 tonight.
Number 3.
And then Florida down 3-0 will come back to make it 3-3, and well, you're on your own after that in game 7.
Well, a 2-0 lead is the most dangerous lead in hockey, as we know.
Number 3.
The news finally broke. The saga finally over. We thought it was dead after Sam Howell signed with the Vikings, and we knew it was dead, but there was still the outside chance that something may happen. Well, now it's officially dead. Aaron Rodgers finally, funny enough, after minicamp is over, says that he will sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers officially.
Yeah, about time, right?
You would think.
Just in time. He intends to attend mandatory minicamp. I believe that's next week for the Steel Curtain as well. Yeah, and all things, this is so much better, the spot he's going to in Pittsburgh than really, there was a lot of hope factor if you think about what was going on with the Jets. And Jets with that defense, you love Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, what can you expect from him? But you needed a franchise that's been so bad for so long to be, not instantly, but in some ways overnight, so much better in very, very key areas. Now, things aren't perfect in Pittsburgh, and figuring out, how that run game, which, it wasn't a bad tandem with Warren and Najee a year ago, but figuring that out, that needs to improve. Part of that would be what we're looking at with the offensive line in front of Rodgers. But just overall stability of a franchise, the equity involved with it, the coaching, all of it is better in Pittsburgh than it was with the New York Jets. So still excited to go to Dublin and beat Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers later on in the regular season. But he's actually kind of landing in probably, the best spot, a better spot would have been Minnesota, right? He comes here. We know what we have. We got coach of the year. We got good defense. And he's got weapons galore. Apples to apples, Minnesota's probably a better spot. But he's not going to a bad situation. And he has the chance to take that team and put them in a playoff position. So, but yeah, in typical Rodgers fashion, had to go to Egypt, had to do this, had to disappear in the woods for a couple of days, had to make people ask about me, hey, what's Aaron up to? I had to run through a few news cycles. Then they finally put the news out, and X is just dominated by Trump and Elon going after each other all day. So, tough day for Rodgers to report that he's going to sign with the Steelers. But yeah, I think it's going to be a good spot for him. And but going backwards, you mentioned Sam Howell, he comes here in the trade, and after a little bit of speculation, great reporting, at least investigative work done by the Athletic in particular, I never thought it was a realistic thing that was going to happen. And, he's on McAfee saying the right things. I can, I'll play for $10 million. I'll play for whatever. It's not about the money. And I actually, okay. I do believe, I believe him. Yeah. I believe him in that regard. But all the same, it never felt like that was a true realistic option. And it always felt like that was something that was, Rodgers was always going to be more excited about coming here than the team was going to be excited about bringing him here. And that's just the way that it kind of felt. There was a lot of effort, we'll say, on his camp's end about making the Vikings a potential reality. So, so I've never looked at it in terms of him signing with the Steelers as the Vikings being a connected piece to the conversation, just ending whatever mystery there was to the whole thing. And, we know what Terry Bradshaw thinks of Aaron Rodgers. So we know that they won't be, pulling the number 12 jersey out for him in Pittsburgh. So best of luck to him, but he's going to lose in Dublin. He's going to lose in Dublin, the J.J. McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings, and it's going to feel absolutely amazing because no matter where Aaron Rodgers is, when my favorite team beats him, it's a tremendous feeling. It's awesome, and I can't wait to do it again overseas, second straight year.
Number 4.
This game took place last night, and it ended, as I'm trying to find it here, it ended... Oh, no, did you get rid of it? Oh, no, here it is. It's right here.
The Pacers have it, 7 seconds. Halliburton across the timeline with 5, down 1. Halliburton dancing on Wallace. Pulls up right wing, arcs it, and sticks it with 0.3 seconds to play. Pacers lead 111-110 with 0.3 seconds to play. Timeout, Thunder.
As I stumbled to the touchdown call, Pacers with the upset in game 1. Halliburton on a last-second pull-up, Jay, and they've got the lead in the series, shocking everybody.
Well, so first of all, a great game. I was shocked, and it was just, they put the Thunder on a uncharacteristically bad shooting night. They were less than 40% from the field overall, and they got to the line a fair amount, but low by Shays. He only took 8 free throws last night, I think. And, 14 of 30, that's a bad night when you don't get to the line and shoot 14 or 15 like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will typically, and as we saw him against the Timberwolves. And Halliburton was unbelievable. Siakam, just the overall everything Siakam does thing is unbelievable to watch. And so game 1 was fantastic. They didn't allow the Thunder to go on that patented third quarter run that we saw them do against the Wolves and make a 10-point lead, a 15 or 20-point lead, and walk away with that thing. And they just kept chipping away. Defensively, they were stronger on the ball than the Wolves ever were, the Pacers I'm referring to. And it was just terrific to watch. With that said, I don't know where you're at on this. So Halliburton, this is the third or fourth time that he's done this in the postseason. Where he's stolen victory from the jaws of defeat. He has silenced crowds at Madison Square Garden. He did it in Cleveland, and now he's doing it down in OKC. His nickname, they're calling him the Haliban. The Haliban.
Oh my gosh, above average.
And I'm not prudish in the regard that I'm offended by it. No, I'm having a hard time. I can't connect Halliburton to a terrorist organization. I can't do that. Now, technically, tongue-in-cheek style, he is certainly terrorizing opposing fan bases and teams. I can't do it. So I'm out on Haliban.
I think I'm out.
I'm out on Haliban. I don't know what, people are free to use whatever nicknames they want. I'm not censoring anybody. Absolutely, and would never dare to. But the Haliban? I don't want to roll with that. I'm out on Haliban. So, but I'm still, and I'm not out on Oklahoma City still winning this series. Again, talking with Johnny last segment, super impressive what Indiana did, but knowing that team the way that we do, just going through this series, you have to respect and understand how tough that hill was to climb last night for Indy. Making the 10-point deficit 6, making it 4. Then you watch SGA get to the line. Contact was a little light. Overall, well officiated game last night. But you know what happens? He makes that 6-point deficit 8 again when he gets to the line. You're frustrated. You settle for a couple of bad threes. They don't go in. And then you just start watching that clock tick down. And they didn't stop. And it was Obi Toppin from distance. It was Neesmith fighting his way through Caruso to get the and one. It was moments like that. TJ McConnell in spurts. And it was really just fantastic to watch what the Pacers were able to do. Can they do it 3 more times? I actually don't think they can. I think OKC will very easily come back in game 2, make it 1-1 before they head off to Indy. Is that all you got?
I can do one more if you want.
Well, we're a little bit up against it. Let's do this. We'll pause. Final segment around the corner. News always presented by the casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com. Final segment. Norderwind for PA is next.
Yeah.
Well, Brett, if you thought the nickname Halaban was bad, which it is, it's just dumb.
It definitely is.
If SGA has a terrific game, too, are you also out then on referring to him as El Shada? No! Where do these come from? I mean, on the front, in one way, just at a base level, it's amusing, but I don't think we'll be using either nickname moving forward. I still think, it's just... What to climb the mountain that the Pacers did, as we've talked about a couple of times today, it was impressive. I just don't think that it can happen again. But thanks to Johnny K for joining today, whether it was Chad Greenway, Ted Schwerzler on the Twins, Dick Girardi, 157th Belmont taking place tomorrow, Fallness on the Wild, Brett for hanging out with me. Just appreciative of everything that went into this potpourri-style Friday feast. I assure you, though, 9 to noon listeners and devoted followers, PA is going to be back. PA is going to be back on Monday, so we're excited to jump into, of course, yes, I know, vocal maintenance. The 2-day thing seems to work. Might stretch that into 3 once in a while. He's trying to find the right rhythm. It's trial and error this time of year in terms of the ramp up. You got the breakdown at the end of the season, into the build-up, hopefully into a fun 2025 Vikings season. But vocal maintenance to the host comes to an end today, and he'll be back in the mix on Monday, in which, are we going to be talking about Edmonton up 3-0? Is game 3 on Sunday?
I don't know.
So are we going to get the first 3 games?
I'm not seeing it on the schedule.
Okay.
So
what a way to end the show with a question that I don't know the answer to. Terrific work, Eric. The point is it's
on Monday. Game 3 is on Monday.
The getting is good right now from what we're watching with Edmonton and Florida in this finals, game 1, Halliburton, and what the Pacers were able to do last night. And hopefully the Twins find their way to some W's this weekend. Thank you so much for hanging out and listening to The Fan. Whenever you do, have an awesome afternoon and weekend. The program is next. It's The Fan.
Personal foul. Clipping.
Hell.
Coming and clean up.
Podcast today's Paul Allen Show, or listen back to previous show and interviews by going to the iHeartRadio app or KFAN.com.